again, I want to thank everybody. First of all, I have to say a couple of things before I start. We're here to talk about the new voting machines. I want to thank Ted for live streaming this, and it's just amazing. He's always around, as well as Kim Strong, who's doing this for Madison Forum. Ted has his own Operation Educate channel on YouTube. It's terrific. I also want to always recognize candidates and sitting House members, and when they come out, I want to thank Priscilla for coming out today. Priscilla's been down and fighting with us for over a year, and we'll explain more about this as we go through, and you'll see all the things that we've been through. So,
Garland Favorito.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Garland Favorito. I'm with VoterGA. Most of you know me here. So, VoterGA is a nonpartisan, nonprofit, all-volunteer organization. We're dedicated to restoring election integrity in the state of Georgia. Now, supposedly, we're going to have election integrity now that we've gotten these new ballot marking devices that have what is being touted as a paper ballot, and they're all secure. I'm going to introduce you to the new voting machine that you have here. I've got 25 reasons, which actually is 30, why we still have some major issues. So let me first introduce you to, this is the new voting equipment. It's a Dominion ICX 5.5.10.30. That's the version of the software. That's going to be important. And that's called ImageCast. And ImageCast Precinct is going to be your new scanner, which is 5.530002. Those, you don't have to worry about those. Just know that everything changes with versions, with version numbers. So I think have y'all been looking at these? Have you run a test on it at all?
Yeah.
So, okay, so so touch screen, it's basically a touch screen like you had before. This one is going to print a selection summary. They call this a ballot. We're going to see the difference between this and a real ballot. Then you as the voter will feed this into the scanner. The scanner will then accumulate, tabulate, and send results on memory cards, which will be taken out and put into the county servers. Each of these has a memory card in it. The system, the first reason of concern here is that this version of this system has been banned in Colorado and Texas prior to us spending $100 million plus.
150.
It is illegal in illegal in Texas. It will be illegal in Colorado at the end of this year. So that would be reason number one.
Can I ask you why it will be illegal?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
Yes. So Dominion in Texas, rejected that. Thank you for asking, Carolyn. For a variety of security reasons, which are a little bit too deep to go into. But Colorado rejected it because it's an unverifiable voting system.
That's right.
And we've been fighting for verifiable voting we've been fighting this for 18 years.
Again.
Now when I say it's unverifiable, what do I mean? Okay, this system is going to accumulate votes based on the barcode. It does not accumulate anything that you saw or verified. What is accumulating is in the barcode. You have no idea what is in that barcode. There is no one in the state of Georgia that can read this. Now, not only, that's reason number two. Number three, not only is it a barcode, it is an encrypted QR code.
Right.
So, which is even worse than a barcode, because an encrypted QR code can contain instructions to tell the scanners to count differently, record differently, and they can do that without detection. QR code can pack a lot of information. So malware can be delivered right off of this QR code to the scanner, and no one would ever know. So that's reason number three. Well, recounts. We're going to have a recount now. However, a recount is not going to be a recount in the state of Georgia. Right. It's going to rescan the unverifiable QR barcode. So basically what that's going to do is it's going to reprint the previous unverifiable results. That's all it's going to do. It's not a legitimate recount by any stretch of the imagination, even in Georgia law. The state says that they're going to cover all this with audits. Well, there are no audits planned for the presidential preference primary, no audit. The state senate, state house races will not be audited. All your countywide races will not be audited. That includes commissioners, school board members, sheriff, district attorney, solicitor. Judicial races and other nonpartisan races will not be audited. Public service commissioners will not be audited, nor will municipal elections and other nonpartisan. None of those races are going to be audited. They're all wide open for fraud and errors in the foreseeable future.
Well, which ones will be audited?
Yeah.
The only ones that will be audited, great, I love you guys, are statewide and federal. Of course, I'll have to pay you later.
Okay.
The only ones that will be audited are statewide and federal races. Now, they're going to use a technique called risk limiting audits. There's a couple of problems with that. A risk limiting audit, according to the inventor of risk limiting audits, Dr. Phil Stark from California, he's already written to the Georgia House and the legislators to say, no, you cannot use RLAs to audit a B&D. It's not, if you try to use it to audit a B&D, it's meaningless. The reason that he says that is because there is no voter-created source document available for the audit. Nothing that the voter created is available for an audit, and that invalidates RLA, which is what they're using, according to the inventor. The other thing he points out is that there's no way to audit what the B&D showed to the voter. It can't be audited. So the only two races that they are going to be audited are using an invalid process. The reason this has been unvalid, I'm going to try to explain this. I hope because it's hard to understand. But a risk limiting audit is a post-election audit. In order to have a legitimate audit on a ballot marking device, you have to have live parallel audits. You're going to have to audit them as during the election to make sure they are displaying correctly. And that requires massive resources, which no one is willing to provide.
Before you go on, Garland, please help me understand that QR code. When we cast our votes, does the machine write the QR code at that point, or what is the QR code exactly?
Yes. So when you will good question. You will fill out your ballot on the touch screen. Let's go back. You will fill out the ballot on the touch screen. You will then say, okay, I've got it the way I want it, cast, and it will, instead of casting as you do it now, it will print this for you. We call it a selection summary. Your votes, you'll see votes here, but you have no idea if that's what's actually in the barcode. It's a kind of a bait and switch technique, the same thing that they did for 18 years with the DRA.
But theoretically, the vote creates the QR code.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Your touchscreen votes creates that QR code.
Theoretic.
Now, you said, you mentioned MALWARE. Is this thing gonna be connected to the internet and that's why it's hackable?
Oh.
No.
Oh, thank you for that question. Give me just one or two more
Okay.
slides. Give me one or two more slides and we'll get there. Is this, because that's the key question. You've heard over and over again that this is not connected to the internet, therefore there are no problems. We're gonna.
Then we went to 2 demonstrations last week, and they said the same thing.
Right. So we'll get there in just a second. Just a couple more points before we get to the internet question. This is not really a ballot. What you're going to do is what's a selection summary. So what that means is it doesn't show referendum language. It doesn't show the candidates that you did not select. And it's going to require you to memorize the referendums in order to be able to validate your ballot. So it's not a legitimate ballot, as you and I know a ballot from a mail-in perspective. So I want to give you a couple of quotes, what scientists say about this. 24 computer scientists say that they've already told the Safety Commission, voters who use the B&Ds are responsible for catching errors or alterations made by the B&D. Your job is now going to be to make sure the B&D presented the votes to you correctly. That's not really your job. Your job should just simply be to vote. National Academy of Sciences says, unless a voter takes notes while voting, B&Ds that print only selections with abbreviated names and descriptions of the contest are virtually unusable for verifying voter intent. These are the top scientists in the country saying that this is not a legitimate way to vote. Now, they could have selected a B&D that printed a full ballot with no barcodes. They chose not to do that because that vendor was not as well connected. And it might have cost a little bit, tiny bit more money. The other issue that's coming up now, and it's a subject of another lawsuit, is the fact that it is
It's
secrecy at the ballot. As you can tell here, when you select a row on these machines, the entire row lights up. And you can see from across the room how somebody voted. This is a huge issue that is in court right now. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. I just wanted you to know a little about that. Of course, as y'all know, the Georgia Constitution requires a secret ballot.
Requires a secret.
I hate to say this, but what we should do is select a booth and sit there and videotape it.
They won't let you.
Yeah.
They won't let you have
Against the
camera in
law.
the precinct.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's funny that you mentioned that. That rule came up yesterday.
Yeah, it did.
And the board voted against cameras, which have never been an issue before yesterday.
But it's always been illegal to photograph your ballot.
That's
your
right.
ballot.
Because then you can sell it.
That's right.
Now, you have a memory card and the written thing?
Yep.
So do they scan the written one, the paper, or do they use the memory card?
Okay, great question. Let me go back. So they will scan, the barcode is going to be scanned. The ballot will then go on, and I'm sorry, I didn't tell you this. The ballot goes into a locked ballot box. When it's scanned,
So we don't get a receipt?
no,
I
that's
was
good.
told that we would get one.
No, you only get a I voted sticker.
Right, that's right. The
Well, and
paper-
the,
yeah, the paper is kept.
That's the
And
truth.
thank you for pointing that out, though. The paper is kept in the precinct.
what's the memory
What
card
the memory
about?
card? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so the memory cards are in the scanners. They will be used.
But there's also, they give you a memory card.
Oh, yeah, they give you a voter access card.
Yeah, that's what I'm
sorry.
trying to-
I'm sorry. Okay.
It's for saying that you are registered and it turns the machine on.
I skipped a little bit about, I should have gone ahead and mentioned that whole.
It allows you to vote.
It's the same card you used to have.
Yeah,
with
Yeah,
all
right.
I
machines.
know, I understand that, I just wanted.
Yeah.
But it's not got anything to do with remembering your vote, it's just, it's a
Access
link
card.
between you and your registration to
Right.
to activate the
Is
machine.
that the way it was before?
So,
That,
yeah.
your vote went on that
So
card.
That's
what-
what I
Same
thought.
thing.
Hold on.
So what's on that card is your ballot style ID. So
Right.
that card will tell the voting machine which ballot to
Oh,
present to
okay.
you,
Yeah.
and it will allow you to cast one vote on it. So, well, actually, the old ones will allow you to cast one vote. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if these
So,
are.
but it won't record the vote.
Correct. It is not.
That's the differentiation with these cards now.
Yeah, so that's called the voter access card. Now, these scanners have cards in it that will be taken to the county with the actual votes in them. And those will be accumulated into your county results from each scanner in each precinct. But that's the elections people that are doing that, that's not.
But that comes off the paper.
Yeah, in theory, the memory cards contain whatever votes you want.
They're accumulated.
So it
Whatever-
does.
Whatever votes that are in this barcode.
So it
They
does
are-
go on the memory card.
They are internal in the scanner. And then that's what is taken by the poll workers to the county, and then they accumulate the results from all the precincts. And all
I'm confused.
But
It's a tabulator, it tabulates all the
But I
votes.
thought it went off the paper.
Well, so
Yeah,
it does.
it does.
So we're gonna have 100, let's say 100 people voting the precinct. It is going to scan each one of those in. Then on that card, it's gonna say, well, 50 people voted for candidate A and 50 voted for candidate B. That little memory card will be taken out and along with the election results, just like the precinct workers do today, they take those to the county.
And compare them?
And then they will upload them into the county server to produce the county results. So the memory cards in here will summarize into the county results. They will be used, and it's a manual process. The poll manager loads it to the county, the card, and that's how they get that's how the county accumulates all the results.
You could lose those memory cards.
You could. They do have, in fairness to them, they have a lot of controls in place.
Yeah.
Numbers, each card is numbered and ID, so they're pretty good, and have been pretty good about tracking the cards in the past. But going back to the, well, I think we talked about the selection summary. So that's another, this is really what I call a ballot system. It's not a real ballot. There were other B&Ds that could have been purchased. As you can see, we got image cast X, we got double red X's here. They could have picked clear ballot, which is all green. It's independent, complete ballot, no barcodes, full ballot with everything on it. They chose not to do that. And we recommended, basically elections directors and the people were all supporting clear ballot for the most part. Another one they could have picked was Hart. Hart, very touch writer, or they have one or two that are pretty good.
Why didn't they pick those?
Because they couldn't hack them.
Yeah, there you go. I think Priscilla summed it up. But the argument is that the Dominion was cheaper. Dominion backloaded a ton of cost onto the county. So this
Right.
is a $150 million system. They charged $105 million and backloaded about $50 million on one county's expense. So the counties are going to spend $15 million a year total, probably closer to 20, for all kinds of maintenance and logistics. And I'm going to explain all that in just in a couple more slides.
Wasn't there people in the administration with ties to the company?
They ended up,
Follow the money.
they ended up not
Sold the
getting it,
machine.
actually.
Well, the irony about that is that the salesperson, Barry Heron, is the same guy. He left Unison. Everybody thought Unison might get the contract. He left and went to Dominion before the contract was awarded, and he was also the salesperson for the Debo
For Debo.
many, many years ago.
Wow.
Flips
So-
around.
Amazing.
Holy
Yeah.
smokes.
Very well connected gentleman. So there were better options available, more secure systems. We advocated for hand-marked paper ballots. Basically, you can pre-print the ballots and have them in the precinct. That would eliminate the cost of all the D&Ds. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The other option that we did not consider whatsoever, and we kept telling them, please consider what we call ballot on demand.
Right.
Ballot on demand is when you go into the precinct, they print your ballot out right there. So there's no pre-printed cost. You don't have to worry about having the ballots out there. The elections officials love it. It solves the problem. It's a nice compromise. You get a hand-marked paper ballot, but you still have the better security. You don't have to worry about cost of pre-printed ballots and trying to figure out what to do there. Those options would have the same scanning and tabulation process going back. There would be no difference whatsoever for the B&Ds. And they would have only required one B&D per precinct for disabled voters instead of having 10 or 15 per precinct.
What's a BMD?
Ballot marking device. I'm sorry. Thank you for stopping me. So the ballot marking device is a touch screen.
Okay.
These are what we call $3,000 electric pencils.
Uh-huh.
All they do is print out a ballot. They don't, in this case, not even really a ballot. It's
Not
electric
a ballot.
symbol. They don't do anything else. That's all they do, which is what you can do by hand if you they wanted me to do that. So now we get to your point, which is the very most important point, because we have a paper summary. So what's the concern? Okay, the BMDs are still hackable. Ballot marking devices are hackable. Let me give you a couple of quick quotes here. Verified voting. A hand-marked paper ballot is the only kind of record not vulnerable to software errors, configuration errors, or hacking. There is no realistic mechanism to fully secure vote casting and tabulation computer systems from cyber threats. That's the National Academy of Sciences report. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, who lobbied with us, President Trump's campaign advisor, intelligence analyst, who was down at the Capitol lobbying all of the senators, he said, these B&D electronic systems can be easily hacked, just as was the case with the insecure paperless DREs Georgia used before. Dr. Winky Lee, who was from Georgia Tech on the SAFE Commission, the cybersecurity expert, he said, I don't know if you can read this, even though a BMD or voting machine is not directly connected to the internet, it is still under the threat of cyber attacks from the internet. Key point.
Yeah, how's that?
It doesn't have to be connected to the internet to be under the threat of cybersecurity attack. Now, what does he mean by that?
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. Georgia is vulnerable to a single point of attack. They have been vulnerable to it for 18 years. We are one of the only states that bills ballots centrally. Usually most counties bill their own ballots. And because they're building them centrally, an attacker can hack an election without accessing any ballot marking device and without a ballot marking device internet connection, because they're going to do this through ballot templates. The ballot templates have to be distributed to the ballot marking device or the DRE, as we saw in the past. This is where the vulnerability is. So malware can be inserted in the ballot template process, and malware can be designed so that it's not detectable during testing by a variety of reasons, and I'll explain a couple of those. So there is a standard process in place to distribute this election preparation information, the ballots, to the counties. If you compromise the system before it's distributed, you can use the distribution process and no one would ever know. There's not a soul in the county would know that anything is hacked, and even most of the people in the state may not even know. So this is how this malware can spread, and it can be programmed to be undetectable by logic and accuracy testing, because it can be triggered by mode, date, ballots cast. There's all sorts of ways to trigger it. In our old system, they have a test mode and election mode. The software can detect whether it's in test mode or election mode and count differently in each mode. And you might remember the Volkswagen emissions test, very, very similar.
So the first step in this, it is connected to the internet, where it can be hackable? The first step, the blue?
Yes. So the first step, I'm so glad you're asking this question. So if you remember the Kennesaw State exposure,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
where the central ballot building server was exposed to the internet, and we found out that it was exposed to the internet for at least 13 years.
Right.
13 years they were operating wide open elections subject to fraud. Now they got caught with that, so they implemented a new process, and the ballot building is being conducted by contractors off-site, who then use the internet to send the ballots to Georgia, the Secretary of State's office, and then they didn't take this and they put it on a memory stick and take it and put it into the election server. That was the process that was revealed in the U.S. District Court discovery. No one knew that, and they were forced to reveal that, and we were all aghast when we found out about it, because we were surprised. We did not know it was that open to fraud. That, as far as we know, is the current process. I asked Brad this week in front of the Atlanta Press Club, are you still using that process? And there was dead silence in the room for 10
So they're still gonna
seconds.
use contractors to initially do that first step?
Right, and are they
And send it through the internet?
That's right. And I asked him that. I said, Brad, are you still using the contractors that you were using last year to build these new ballots? Dead silence at the Atlanta Press Club for 10 seconds. Chris Harvey and Brad Raffensperger kept looking at each other. You answered. No, you answered. No, you answered. No, you answered.
No.
That's how bad it was. So I can assume from this lack of candor in front of the press that they're still using this process.
Because the
Who went to jail for
contractors
this?
aren't working for this, I mean, they're not state employees.
Right.
Right.
Two of the contractors came from KSU, the exposure.
Oh, awesome.
And the other one is the former assistant elections director here. Beth Cage.
But they're not gonna use, I know they're not gonna use KSU. My daughter works in the IT department, so I know they're not gonna use KSU.
That's right. But the people who are involved, in fact, we're going to get there in just a minute, are now operating within the Secretary of State's office. I'll name names.
Oh, no.
So, voters, the other problem, I said that counties cannot detect these problems. Voters cannot detect them either on a ballot marking device. So a voter has no means to determine if the ballot marking device displayed the races accurately. And they don't, if they found out they didn't, they don't have any evidence that could convince the poll worker that it was displayed inaccurate. So let me give you an example. The Lieutenant Governor's race in 2018, where it lost 120,000 plus votes. Very few people know about that. It wasn't reported that well. There were normal results in all the other down ballot races. And whether it's a B&D or a DRE, it can be hacked in the same manner. So let me go back. I want to explain to you, this is how you can hack a B&D, even though you have a paper ballot. You can hack it without detection. So in the 2018 race for lieutenant governor, not governor, everybody was focused on the governor's race.
Yeah.
Oh, they were buying Kemp. But where the action was in the lieutenant governor's race. So they said, look over there, don't look here
Yeah,
where
right.
it went down.
Standard tactic.
So, exactly. So here you see the lieutenant governor's race. This is a massive drop-off that is unexplained by any election expert in the entire country. They all looked at this, and it was a massive drop-off that went back up for the rest of the down ballot races. So we have the governor's race up here. This is historic. This is the historic trend from undervotes.
And those are votes?
Yeah, so what you have here is the red and the gray are the two previous election cycles, which have been 2014, 2010, something like that.
Can
And
we
you
turn
see
the top
this-
light on for just a second? Because you can't really see both lines up on the top.
Oh, you can't? I'm
Not
sorry.
really.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, good. Let's do
You
Yeah.
see, you see how there's two lines up above the.
Yeah.
Right. This is your normal drop-off rate, and that, as you can see, that's a very, very typical drop-off rate. So from the governor's race, they dropped back about 1–2%. So 98% of the people who vote for governor vote for your down ballot race.
Right.
In general, give or take a little. Well, suddenly in the lieutenant governor's race, this number dropped down to about 95%. Inexplicably. No one can explain why the lieutenant governor's race dropped by. It was reported very well.
It's a law of perpetual inverses.
And it dropped off. It dropped off only in the electronic voting.
Yeah.
There was no drop off in the mail-in voting. The mail-in voting was completely normal. He followed that same path.
And that 120,000 votes that are missing from Amico's race just happen to equal the number of votes that Brian won by.
That's right.
Jeff won by, yes.
Well,
No, I'm talking about that Brian Kemp got over Stacey Abrams.
Oh,
So those votes got transferred from Jeff to,
Or from Stacey Amico,
Well,
or
we-
whatever her name
gee,
is.
that's really
Sarah
incredible.
Amico Riggs.
yeah, and now this is not provable.
Yeah.
We can't prove that, but
Why are we
that,
talking
those
about
are the statistics. No one will explain, has been able to explain why that drop-off occurred. What happened to, so we have 120,000 lost votes. Now, what's interesting about this is the drop-off rate was not equal amongst the candidates. Jeff Duncan's drop-off rate was a completely normal 1.35, but Sarah Riggs' Amico drop-off rate was almost 5%. That's unheard of.
Wow.
In Georgia
No, it
election
wasn't
history.
an accident.
So the question is, why did it happen? And what it appears to me is that these ballots, that race was selectively non-displayed in precincts that had demographics that were more likely to vote for Sarah Riggs Amico. And they have the capability, this is the way they can hack, it's a new way to hack. And I define all this in the security
Wouldn't the voters
analysis.
say something? If they register a Democrat, wouldn't they have said something if that wasn't up there on the screen?
You don't
Well,
realize.
you
I
probably
mean-
would not realize that, and some people did actually.
Some people.
But the lieutenant governor's race is kind of up there.
Right.
Wouldn't they have noticed?
So here's what happened. This is a great question. I love your question. So what happened was they found out later that when you go to the cast ballot summary, it's non-displayed in the beginning, but when you go to the cast ballot summary and you catch it and you click the button to go back to the lieutenant governor's race, then it displays correctly. So the voter would have expected that, okay, I must have made a mistake. I must have missed it the first time. So
Wow,
it's
that's serious stuff.
Yes, it is.
It's very, very clever.
That's really bad.
Very clever way to deceive
Golly.
the voters. It only displays correctly initially, but not if they catch it. So that everybody's gonna think it's their own cloud, not the machine.
Or, Garland, could it also be that the voter is just an uninformed voter and doesn't even know who's running for that position?
True.
Right. Yeah,
True.
absolutely. The other possibility is it's uninformed.
Well,
But
that was one of the studies, it's only like 63% of voters actually check their ballot.
That's the
before they
problem.
Or
cast.
they really know who's running.
Or they even know.
Well,
Well, that's another story, that's probably
Maybe they're
like
just-
40%.
Right, but yeah, absolutely, it could be uninformed, it could be a legitimate hack. But there's no other explanation that I can see other
Well,
than. it's
And
a
that's
hack.
not, it's across the state.
Don't forget,
That's right.
that's the same election, we had to answer, what was it, 7 questions that we had to
Oh,
read
yeah.
paragraphs of.
Right.
It took forever.
Right.
I mean, you make ballots like that, we're gonna
It's
have problems,
distracting.
okay?
It can be
I
distracting.
mean, people get to stand there reading those things, they can't even understand them, you know.
Which is why you need a full
I was there
ballot.
watching it, I was observing it.
Right, which is a good argument for a full ballot, not a selection summary, because so you can actually read it. You can take your ballot and read it.
Right.
So.
Well, I got a question. What's the undervote on the absentee ballots? Because they're all paper.
There was,
I think
that's what I was
that
saying,
way
there was
now.
no difference in the undervote on that. The absentee ballots for lieutenant governor's race followed the normal trend. It was about a 1.5 point undervote.
Do they hand count those? Is that what they do with the absentee ballots?
They scan them through a scanner.
That's essentially.
But it tends to be more accurate, correct? I mean.
Right.
Well, you have a verifiable paper ballot, so, which we're gonna advocate for mail-ins, as you'll see.
I
at
think
the end.
that's
Also
how
known
I'm
as
gonna do it.
physical evidence.
Right.
Right, you have physical evidence of your vote.
Yeah, you could make a copy.
That you verify. So, a few more issues that we need to discuss. the state courts are unmotivated to adjudicate these kinds of election issues. This case was taken, the one we just talked about, Lieutenant Governor's case, was taken to Cobb Superior Court, and they, Judge Adele Grubbs, you might know her, blew this off. Now, Judge Grubbs was the same one, by the way, she didn't even allow discovery
That's
on the
terrible.
case. She said she literally lied in court, said she was allowing discovery, then she did not allow discovery. Nobody could ever find out where the 120,000 votes went. Now, they would have been able, had they gotten the code, they could have been able to see what happened. They could have found the malware. This is the same judge that you remember Michael Opeth's case when he ran for the 11th district.
Right.
This is the same judge that refused to allow him to inspect his mail-in ballots. Said that he had no compelling reason to inspect his mail-in ballot. Judge Adele Grubbs. And she's retired now, but she managed to do some pretty serious damage to elections before she
Him being
died.
a candidate gives him the right.
Garland, she's
That's- that was
retired,
her.
she's a senior judge.
Yeah, according to
She
the
is a
Spirit.
senior judge on the court, and so she's
So-
still alive and well.
Matt,
Oh,
can
she
you
is
turn the
still
lights back on?
She is a senior judge.
Okay, all right. So that's a real problem, because she said that he had no compelling reason to look at his own
yeah,
ballots.
right.
That's her exact quote out of the order.
Excuse me, Matt, can you turn the lights back on?
Well, don't they have to look at some kind of law that compels them to do that?
I thought state law was very clear. If you wanted to look at the ballot,
No, glad you mentioned that. Charlie Gregory had a bill in to do exactly that, to be able to look at the ballots. Candidates should be able to look at their ballots. You could not get a hearing on that bill. And they didn't really care for Charlie down at the legislature. Mr.
Which is why they put Burt Reeves in.
Exactly, Mr. Ralston.
Oh.
And then David Ralston inserted Burt Reeves, and there was this massive campaign. I don't know if y'all remember this, but there was a massive campaign to smear Charlie Gregory and get him out of the legislature. And I've got, if you want to read that, it's a great story, VoterGA.org news. It was a coalition for job creation, went out and collected a bunch of money from major corporations,
AT&T.
Coca-Cola, Delta, and then instead of using it to create jobs, they used it to smear Charlie Gregory, and so that Ralston could get Burt Reeves in that seat. And I'm glad, Priscilla, that you're running against Burt, because we got some more problems.
I didn't know all of that until you turned me on to it, and now I'm scared.
Yeah, you should be. 'Cause
I am.
It's a nasty thing.
It is nasty. It is really nasty.
Yeah, it's
Many Republicans
not-
have been wanting to get Ralston
for the
out.
meek.
Oh,
Absolutely.
so a bunch of Democrats.
So, there's point of agreement there. So U.S. District Court, they have not ruled on the Constitution. They've already made a landmark ruling saying the DREs are unconstitutional, they banned them. But they haven't, DREs are the ones, the old machines. These new ones they have not ruled on. But they have found that the Secretary of State's office is not credible. And this goes back to our 2017, the server wipe in Kennesaw State. Judge Totenberg said, given the entire course of events described here, he's talking about the server wipe, the defendant's contention that the servers were simply repurposed and not intentionally destroyed, wiped, is flatly not credible. That's the U.S. District Court judge. The chief information officer, she was also very upset about them deceiving her. The chief information officer of the Secretary of State's office, Merritt Beaver, hired a company called Fortis to do a security assessment of the Secretary of State's office, but he told them, don't look at elections, just look over here. Where have we heard this before? So they only look at the Secretary of State's public server. They never looked at anything regarding elections, which is what the issues were actually were. And then he bragged and said that, well, we did penetration testing. Well, but we found out in court, what were the results of the penetration testing? Well, the Fortalist had actually penetrated and taken complete control of the Secretary of State server. It was that open. That's a server for corporations licensed.
I know the person
securities.
that worked on the plan of trying to clean all this up at KSU. They had told the Secretary of State months in advance that that server was going to be wiped. Because it was part of the overall plan
That's
in
right.
writing. And also, I know for a fact that Kemp's office told them, don't email us. If you want to email us, call first and tell us what's going to be in the email.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So,
I got this from the horse's mouth.
2 points. No, you're absolutely right. The elections director, there is no email. We did open records requests for emails with the elections director. There's not one
And they also paid somebody $27,000 to handle that server. Somebody totally young and no experience, $27,000.
Now, let me go back to your point because that's another important point. The IT, you have to understand, in Kennesaw State, there's an IT department, and then there is a Center for Election Systems, which is dual reporting to IT, Kennesaw, and the Secretary of State's office. IT at Kennesaw State warned them at least weeks in advance. I don't know the exact date, but I think it was at least weeks in advance.
Well, it was a full plan that they put in place
That's
in February of that year.
That's exactly right.
And then it got wiped, what, in August or something? They knew about it.
That's exactly right.
And they
So-
blamed KSU for it.
Well, yeah, they blamed it was actually the Center for Election Systems, which was operating within KSU. But IT, as you said, warned the Center for Election Systems, and this is Merle King and Michael
Yeah.
Barnes. We're gonna wipe this server, and it was the responsibility of Michael Barnes to ensure that that server was not wiped. He is the operational director, along with Merle King. So let's go through this. Here's what actually happened. The central ballot building server was found to be exposed to internet for years. Logan Lamb reported it to KSU, to Merle King. Uh-oh, I got to put.
You need some AC, sir.
Yes, I do. Give me just a second here. So Logan reported this to KSU. He reported it to Merle King. And Merle didn't mitigate the problem. Merle did not mitigate the problem, and 6 months later, they found out that it still existed.
6 months later?
Yeah, this was in August 2016, and then it was March of 2017.
Yep,
So it's
yeah, I got it
actually
all.
maybe 7 or 8 months. So they refused to open a forensic analysis. Once they found out this was exposed, Barnes and King did not open do a forensic analysis. They didn't take any action to disinfect the county servers that could have been all infected all over the county. And then they allowed the central election server to be wiped, which is a violation of the Secretary of State's data retention policies, and KSU IT did warn them about that, both from a technical perspective and a legal perspective. So, in order to cover all that, this was Michael Barnes who allowed this to happen. Remember that name. The legal counsel, Ryan Germany, then produced a 2-page report saying that that's standard procedure to wipe the server. So I'm in IT, and I don't know if y'all remember, I did a presentation here. We did a whole audit of this. It's a 14-page audit, and it says that's not standard procedure. Standard procedure is you do a forensic investigation, you figure out what happened, how to mitigate it. That's the way to resolve the issue. They didn't do anything of that, they just covered it up. So, a lot of the security vulnerabilities are still unmitigated. I mentioned that they hired Fortalist and didn't let them look at elections, but they did let them look at the voter registration system. They found 15 flaws in the voter registration system, but there's no evidence that any of them were ever mitigated, and 22 security flaws in the Secretary of State's office. Only 3 were mitigated as of 2018 elections. So real quickly, there are a couple of federal lawsuits pending on constitutional challenges. This is another reason why you need to be concerned. And there's one state legal challenge on this right to a secret ballot. I'm just going to play a 2-minute clip real quickly. You can see how serious this is.
All right, number one, you've got to have your absolute secrecy.
Right.
I'm fine with that. If your ballots are not absolutely secret, I could see that you could have a void election.
Right.
I can see this is a constitutional requirement, aside from being statutory. Statute in the Constitution will prevail. If you're going to win on secrecy, you're going to win because you're going to get your absolute secrecy.
Right.
And Mr. Tyson, looking at 1, 2, 3, you agree there's a problem with 1, 2, 3.
Your Honor, I'm not going to concede there's a problem with 1, 2, and 3. I think there's some legal arguments why that's not a problem, but for purposes of this, in terms of the absolute secrecy piece,
Meaning I can look at 1 and I can see that there's a privacy issue. I can look at 2 and I can see that there's a privacy issue. I can look at 3 and I can see there's a privacy issue.
no, this is a real issue. Georgia's going to be a big state in play probably in several weeks. And
I can see their problems.
That would be one issue that'll be raised, where you would have wholesale violation of secrecy.
I think that the Board of Elections should have the opportunity to comply with the law. The compliance issue that I am dealing with is the absolute secrecy.
Doing the right thing is also the easiest thing.
I don't know how they're going to do the right thing, but they have to do the right thing.
Yeah, well,
That's their problem. I'm dealing with the privacy issue or the secrecy of the ballot. And it may be hard for them to remedy. And once again, in my status as a superior court judge, I don't know, and this is once again kind of a question, is it my job to fashion a remedy or just require compliance with the statute? And I think I just have to require compliance with the statute, and it's, sorry guys, but it's your problem to find a remedy.
So what he's saying there, he flat agrees that there's a privacy issue, and he's saying that he believes his role is to determine whether or not they mitigated right, but not forcing a ruling on it. So that was from this week. That court case, I think, was Tuesday. So we flipped this in real quickly so that you could see it. But so they're under legal challenges. I just want to mention a few last things about how everyone has ignored the will of the people here. So that we first started with this SAFE Commission. You remember Brian Kemp started this thing as soon as he ran for governor. And then it sat idle for 6 months and did absolutely nothing. And then they ended up cramming a report down their throat the night before they had a vote. During that time, 100 citizens, well over 100, probably 150, testified for hand-marked paper ballots. We testified against hidden barcodes. I produced a report, VoterGA. We had a whole report of recommendations. And I made a presentation down in Macon to the commission about the issues. But the commission, in fairness, were not able to do their own thing. Secretary of State's counsel, Ryan Germany again, comes in and he produces this report the night before the commission meeting. And basically, they crammed that report down the throats of the commission members the next day. Over the objections of Winky Lee, the Georgia Tech cybersecurity expert, who says, no, we don't want this. The report recommended B&Ds for all voters. The report did not require human readable votes to be tallied. And it even contained provisions that nobody on the SAFE commissions had recommended, like reducing the recount range. It's been reduced from 2 points to 1 now, in order to trigger a recount. So we had people like, this is Susan McWhitty, who testified down there, and I don't know if you can see this, she says, I voted, and it's a barcode.
Right, and how do you verify that?
We had T-shirts, they had T-shirts, in the yellow T-shirts now.
Have they purchased these machines already?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll get into a cost. So, your tax dollars at work. I'm going to give you a little bit about the cost. So the Secretary of State basically has ignored the will of the people. Here's how they did that. They had the request for proposal and the evaluation criteria, but they didn't put any criteria in for human readable votes. They didn't put anything in to prevent full ballots or anything for ballot building security. There was nothing in that. And all of the issues that are important to you as a voter were left out of the request for proposal. The State Election Board also ignored the will of the people. This was a shot. I want you to see this. Can we flip this light just for a second, maybe just for 1 minute? This was the State Election Board 2 days ago. This was a silent protest. There were 15 different kids down there, all testifying articulately for, on the privacy issue, on the barcode issue, amazing testimony. They were all ignored, as we were. And the SEB adopted the recount rule just to rescan the barcode and delegitimize all recounts. So they'll just reprint unverifiable results. They rejected the rule to define the vote as the human readable text. They're going to allow the barcode to be the official vote. And they, which is somewhat a violation of Georgia law. And they rejected the rule to allow hand-marked paper ballots to be submitted at the poll. So if you don't want to use the BNB, the rule was just take your hand-marked paper ballot on early voting or election day and submit it. They rejected that rule too. So they also ignored the will of the people.
Did you say that these were the young kids?
Yeah, the signs in the
They
background.
were technical young kids, is that what they were?
Yeah, they were Georgia State grad.
Got it,
They're all in
okay.
Georgia State.
Jeez.
Various
And-
Democratic clubs.
From
Yeah.
a few schools too. And they put these over their mouths.
Yeah, barcode. Yeah, I had one.
Here, let me see that.
That's appropriate.
I like that. So, wrapping up, just a couple more slides. The legislature ignored the will of the people as well. Again, we were down there, we testified we presented security concerns. I did a presentation to the Senate Ethics Committee. At least 50 citizens testified in the House, probably more. All the legislators received information packets, and even President Trump's intelligence analyst, campaign advisor was there. Nevertheless, the House voted for House Bill 316, and this is a bill that Burt Reeves voted for. Let me tell you how bad this bill is. This is the worst bill I've ever seen in working at the legislature for the last 15 years.
Can we stop just and mention that they also violated the law in the need for a financial statement before the bill was even
Yeah,
created?
that's right.
I actually am going to get there.
Okay.
Who is Barry?
Yes, that was my next slide.
Okay.
That's great. Yes, and they did violate the law that required fiscal notice.
And
Who
who's
is Barry?
Barry?
Barry is Barry Fleming of Augusta. This was his bill. He got it through, and as a result, he was promoted to the House Judiciary Committee chairman, which is the most powerful chairmanship in the House.
Nice.
Yes, it
He
is.
did good for himself.
Yes, he did, and let me tell you what he did for you. Listen, so this House Bill 316 required the state to purchase 30,000 ballot marking devices at $3,000 a pop. These are the $3,000 electric pencils to be used for all voters. Now, obviously, you have to have one for disabled voters, but you don't have to have them for all voters. That was the most expensive initial purchase option, at least $50 or $100 million. It was the most expensive ongoing option. I want to tell you a little bit more about the ongoing expenses. We'll get there in just a second. Least secure option, the least auditable option, according to all the experts, and it was the most legally vulnerable option because it's now being, they're having to defend 2 or 3 different lawsuits, 3 different lawsuits. Yes, sir.
Please mention that that bill was basically created in Walston's office.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for
Wow.
thank you for pointing this out. As, yes, the only sponsors for this bill, the only sponsors were the leadership team of David Ralston.
Oh, no.
There was not one single Democrat or Republican on this bill other than Ralston's leadership team. Thank you so much for
Reminding us.
for reminding
You know,
us.
Brad ran on Audible. Brad Raffensperger, he ran.
Brad was here.
He ran on that.
We explained all of this to Brad, he was here.
That was his promise.
Wait a minute, he ran for Secretary of State,
Right.
which has no control over the purchase.
No, the Secretary of
No,
State-
absolutely they do.
So the legislature, just to clarify that, the legislature required the B&Ds to be purchased. Brad had jurisdiction to buy a verifiable B&D, an article or not.
Yeah, he ran on that.
Brad chose to buy the B&Ds with the barcodes. He was forced to buy B&Ds for everybody. But he chose to buy the ones that you cannot verify. So that's how that breaks
He
down.
went against his major promise.
Yeah, he was here, we explained all this when he was still in the runoff against David Malone.
Carl, a quick question in this, when he did this, was Mike Bowers and Lewis Massey and their little corporation that gave us the original machines with Diebold, how involved were they with this, do you know?
Oh, great question. So Lewis Massey was behind a group called Unison.
Right.
He was lobbying for them. Unison, we thought was going to get the contract, but suddenly they dropped out kind of unexpectedly, and we still do not know why. But the salesperson for Unison, Barry Herring, went to Dominion, which ended up with the contract.
Yeah.
Why they dropped out, we're still not sure. It was kind of a mystery.
Payoff,
Great question, though.
Okay.
Great question.
And it happened at the Figaro's probably.
So, just real quickly, there's a lot of false information coming out on the cost. But I want to quickly go back to Ted's point. So this is a minimum $150 million, $105 million is really actually more. $60 million more than a hand-marked paper ballot system, $40 million more than a ballot-on-demand system. The taxpayers are going to pay for this for 20 years. It's a 20-year bond. The system has a 10-year shelf life. So the taxpayers will be paying for this for another 10 years after the useful life is up. The bond interest alone is almost as much as the hand-marked paper ballot system costs, because they're borrowing the money. And, as Ted mentioned, it was approved without requiring a legally required fiscal note.
What does that mean? Note?
Absolutely.
Talking about a loan?
Yeah, so a
No.
fiscal note. So the way that works, legislature, if you're gonna spend any amount of money, much less like a couple $100 million, it's required to do it, it's more of an analysis. It's an analysis that produces a fiscal note that says, okay, here are your real costs, here are your real benefits. And that is normally done for any kind of significant expenditure, much less the biggest expenditure that we've had in decades.
It's kind of like not putting the budget together.
No. They do more than education and roads and all that. That's
Well,
a big-
yeah,
Those
but
are big
it's in the
expenditures,
project.
but we don't see anything about that either. So.
$300 million is a big project even for any educational roads. So the other thing we didn't talk about was ongoing costs for counties. So the counties, this is where, in order to get the contract, they backloaded all this expense, extra expense on the counties. The counties have to have licensing expense, maintenance expense, testing, logistics, all sorts of other expenses which will add up to about 15 million a year. In Fulton County, they had bought these big boxes to secure the votes at a couple, 3,000 apiece.
Even during non-election years, they still pay 15 million a year?
That's an average. That's an average.
Okay.
I'm averaging, so in an election year, it's even more. Yeah. The average per year. And the director also has provided some false information to the legislators. He told them that he couldn't remember any historical problems with the machines. He misrepresented the whole case on the KSU.
Oh, yeah, he lied, Ken lied.
And, yeah, and he made a lot of incorrect assertions about the election code as well. So, getting to the bottom line here, all these people are still in the Secretary of State's office. The Assistant Director, Michael Ballings, who was responsible for the KSU issue, is still there. The legal counsel Ann Germany, who covered it up and produced a report for the State Commission and clamped it down on its roads. Chris Harvey, false information about the cost to publish on the Secretary of State's website. And then the Chief Information Officer, Merritt Bieber, who told them don't look at the elections, go over here.
Well, let's also talk about Chris Harvey sending out a letter to the county election heads.
Yeah.
That was completely blatantly false and misleading.
That's right, they didn't put that on there. So Chris sent a letter to the county elections people saying that they could not they had no authority to decide what to do for their own elections, which is false according to Georgia code. We caught him on that. A lot of people were on him about that. CGG had written out. I wrote a letter to all the county officials to tell them that they Chris Harvey lied. So, the bottom line of everything, let's get to the bottom line. Now, y'all have been very patient.
This is really interesting.
Unnecessary electronics negligently increase election security risk. Right? You've seen how. We need BMDs for disabled voters. We don't need them to have for everybody because it's the easiest way to rig an election. We need a trustworthy system and trustworthy officials to administrate it. And we need a trustworthy media. So the media is not reporting these security issues either. How many of these issues have you seen in the news of any kind? Nothing. They
Why
will
would
not
not
report it.
Atlanta Constitution do that? Why?
They're in bed with Brad.
Yeah.
They are totally compromised. AJC, WABE, and WSB to some degree. They're all pretty well compromised.
AJC and WSB are the same thing.
So the solution is vote by mail.
Yes.
So you can now get an application very easily by email. I've got some applications here, please take them. We are encouraging everybody to vote by mail. I've got information about how to include that and how to do it. It's incredibly easy now. So you can get your application, email, phone call, or going on the website, or you can just pick one up here. You can scan the application and email it to the county. You don't have to, you can put a stamp on it and put it in the mail. You'll get a real full ballot with no barcodes. You can do that. And you'll need only one stamp to return it, or you can take it to the county and return it. And you can now, go ahead.
You might want to, another option is to directly take a hand carry it to the registrar of voters.
That's right.
Because they caught a mail carrier a few years ago here in Atlanta dumping ballots in the dumpster of the opposite party that mail carrier was supporting.
How did he know which one?
Yeah, how did he know?
How did he know?
I guess he was open, it was a female in this case, she was opening them. And so,
What did she do if it was not the ones that, if she didn't want to rip them up, then what'd she do, resell them?
I don't know, they didn't go into that detail, but a surveillance camera caught her, and she was arrested. It's a federal offense.
Tampering with mail.
Postal service person or?
Right, the mailman,
Wow.
yeah.
Scan it and send it.
So if you take it directly to the registrar of voters, you can bypass any potential trouble that
That's
that
right.
matter.
And if there's signs in the yard, she can tell.
You can take it right to Cobb County, oh, that's the manual.
Oh, that's a good point.
You can take it right to Cobb County elections, and you can even check to see if they received it and counted it. If they received it and have recorded your vote, you can check online now to do that. This is all new stuff, so it's really easy, and I'm stopping there. Y'all been really patient, and I went a little bit longer than I wanted to.
There's only one conclusion. They want to cheat.
That's right.
Right.
I'm sorry, but
There's
that's,
only one conclusion.
It's not who votes that counts, it's who counts the
Stalin.
votes.
It's
Stalin.
want
Lenin.
to cheat.
Lenin.
Thank you.
Oh, Lenin? Was it Lenin?
It was Stalin. Yes, sir.
What would be a valid recount?
A valid recount would be to manually count the text on those papers, summaries.
Assigned by, how's the data put down?
I'm sorry.
How is the data gonna be put down?
Okay, so go back.
No, I don't wanna go back, I just want you to answer the question.
It's stored electronically on a hard drive.
The data that you verify,
Okay, and put somewhere else?
You verify this.
That,
You have to manually count.
that was the machine that put that down there, that no person put that down there. How is that a recount?
So in theory, in theory, the voter verified this. They can't see what's in there. So
Well,
it is-
no, you can't see what either one if you're blind, but
That's
what I'm
true.
saying is,
Good point.
when you put it down, when you marked it, when you voted, you put an X there, you don't have a copy of it, and the machine then takes over.
Well-
It can transfer it into whatever it wants to.
Yeah,
What's
but-
a valid recount, sir?
So you have to put this ballot in the scanner. You as a voter.
That could already have been affected by the machine that created it.
Right,
Yeah,
the ballot,
that's
the
his
ballot,
point.
that disappears, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's his
taken
point.
from you.
This will go into the scanner.
Yeah, we don't even get it.
So.
that's right.
But
It goes into
the
a
theory
box.
is that you were able to see.
All
you're
right,
able to see
back
the-
off. Forget about the one you're talking about now. What's a valid recount? Okay, don't even think about the one you've been dealing with over the years here. Let's think about what's a valid recount.
It's a manual tabulation of what the votes that the voter verified.
That's right, and that is not that.
Correct.
Well, in theory, the votes were, and I do agree with your point, because you're not, this is a selection summary, it's not a full ballot.
Anything that's on that sheet of paper right there can be manipulated by malware, am I not right?
Right,
Well,
but
the
you're
point is, you
gonna
don't know
look
what's
at
in
the
that
paper.
little thing.
So we're not, we don't know that information there, I mean, it may read that, but it may not be
And
actually
so,
that. When the
but-
counter
so-
goes through it, it counts
So,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's the whole
That's
issue.
the whole
yeah.
problem.
There's two different ways. So in a full ballot,
Exactly right.
you use mark sense technology. You mark a bubble, and then the machine counts based on the coordinates, counts the bubble.
I know how those things work, I've seen them for
So,
years.
in theory, you verify these selections, although you have a lot of issues in memory and things. So they could recount these, but they have to do that manually.
Right.
And they're not gonna do that.
Exactly.
Well,
Unless the
that
vote
makes
is
it
like
hard.
2% off.
So, you know, we need to come up with some way that's feasible for the amount of votes we're trying to account and the time frame that the press wants us to give it to them so they can sell their newspapers and things. When we really are under the gun here to do something, right?
Absentee
Well,
And
ballots.
what have we come up with?
Absentee
Something
ballots.
that does just that, okay? It doesn't do anything for what a valid recount really is.
Now, when they do a
And the law
recount,
has never kept up with any of this information, okay? The
Right.
when
law
they do a
is,
recount, they just
Problem.
read that square.
You're gonna read that square. We
They're
tell
not
them-
gonna read that,
We tell them you need to manually count these.
Right.
but they're not gonna do it,
Right.
okay?
That would have cost too much trouble.
Garland, what is the advantage of this versus, you might call it a paper ballot? How much faster are you gonna get results? That's where Jim's going is. I need results before the vote.
I
don't care, I'll wait
all the time,
3 days
right?
for a correct
It would be the
election.
same.
Yeah,
It's
Even
Read everything.
after the initial tabulation, they still have a month or so to certify the election.
there's no difference in speed between hand-marked paper ballots, ballot marking devices, and ballot on demand, because the back-end process is all the same.
Yeah.
Well,
From
wait
the
a minute,
time
it
you
was,
put this into the scanner, the scanning and tabulation is all the same.
Right.
It's the same speed, the only question is how do you mark your ballot? So there's no dispute from the back end. So there's no speed issue here. Speed is not an
so
issue.
we're gonna go back to Jim's point, is how do you have you wanna call it a recon? If you had a paper ballot, then somebody can actually sit there and count the ballots, with actual ballot, not a barcode. So you're paying more money for something that gives you less.
Yep.
So any financial guy in the world would tell you to get the hell out of here, I'm not gonna do that deal.
Yeah.
If you do, I'm not following you, Gary.
If I had a hand-marked ballot, which is gonna cost less to produce and operate, and I don't get, this doesn't give me anything other, any faster results than that does, and I got an way to audit it, manually go in there and count on it, so why would you do this? Because you're spending more money to get less.
That's, and they did it because it's hackable, that's why they want it.
Exactly.
I mean,
That's the irony, Jim, you hit the whole head here. That's the irony of House Bill 316.
yes,
You spent hundreds of $millions that didn't need to spend for a system that is not
Right.
secure,
It's
not
not
even
one
good.
conclusion you can make to that.
Somebody made money off
Doesn't
the
make
deal.
sense.
Yep.
Yeah,
Follow the money.
Doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah,
None of it makes
doesn't.
sense.
Okay, well, remember.
Well, but hey, you had a good point there. You talked about a new Secretary of State, but you had the old hack still there. I mean, we've
Yes.
heard this before.
It's the same
You're
stuff.
gonna elect a new congressman or senator, but you still got the same hacks that are running the office. So how does that change anything?
And you only get a choice of 2 or 3.
That's why you don't believe what they tell you.
Okay,
Some of it.
so, now I'm gonna go, all right?
Okay.
I have matters of mitigation. The first thing I'm gonna tell you is what was told to me and presented to us when we went to the second voting machine demonstration. We've been to 2 of these. We actually used these machines in an actual election for the Smyrna mayor race.
yes, you did, that's right,
We used those exact same machines, first time in our lives.
that's right.
So we've done that already, and we've been to 2 practical demonstrations already. The last one was key. Sam Teasley presented it. You know who he is.
Oh, I know Sam, yeah.
So the first part of what I'm going to tell you is what was told to us by Sam Teasley and his representative, the guy that was the technical advisor of the voting machines. And he was at every single demonstration.
I wish I'd been there.
Point the camera.
Yeah, well, I think they're still carrying them on. They're kind of like town hallish
Right,
meetings.
right.
And so, and they're going through all the districts. We were told that the paper ballots will be maintained for 2 years in storage. And we were also told that there would be periodic audits of approximately 2% of the votes where they manually compare the QR code content
To the names.
quotient to what was physically, what was printed in human terms on that ballot, for periodically for 2% of the votes.
Okay, so I'll address both of those. Paper ballots are going to be stored for 2 years. They're going to be sealed for 2 years, and you will never be able to look at them just like micro-optics.
Yeah.
You can take it to court, and they will tell you you can't look at them, and they will not pass a law that allows you to look at them. So, yeah, technically, Sam told the truth, but he deceived you by making you think that you could somehow one day look at them. That will never happen, according to existing court rulings. The second one is auditing. I'm gonna go back to the audit. The 2% that he was talking about applies only to statewide and federal races. None of these races are gonna be audited. Nothing is gonna be audited except statewide, and that 2%, he's basing that on risk limiting audits. That's what they're implementing, and the risk limiting audits, the inventor has already said you can't use those for ballot devices at this meeting, because you cannot audit what the DMV shows the voter, and there's no voter source document.
So you're saying the Georgia State, the Georgia Center, the governor, the Secretary of State, those aren't gonna be audited, right? So that's easy for Sam to say.
Statewide and federal will be audited.
Right, but you're talking about
Everything.
Congress and Senator.
No,
to
counties and
Washington.
cities will not be audited, is what you're
But I just saw that, it said State House, State Senate. Yeah, look, State Senate, State House, all of that. That's all local. So that's easy for Sam Teasley to say he's not gonna be audited, ever. If he runs, I mean, if he wins, I mean, if he wasn't.
That's right, no local person, the only
Yeah,
thing.
so they're protecting themselves.
Yeah, right, exactly, so only statewide and federal, that's it. And that's not even legitimate audit.
Yeah.
Our audit is the next election.
There you go.
Thank you for coming, we appreciate it.